She burst through the door, gasping, crying, begging for help. A 14-year-old girl in a place no civilian should ever enter, a biker clubhouse. The man behind the counter looked at her trembling body, then at the shadow approaching outside, and whispered 5 words that changed everything. "Pretend I'm your dad. Now." If this story touches your heart, please leave a like and tell us in the comments about someone who protected you when you needed it most. Your engagement helps us bring more powerful stories to your screen. Run. That was the only word in Sophie Mitchell's mind as her sneakers pounded the cracked pavement of Thornwood's industrial district. Run. Don't stop. Don't look back, just run. But she could hear him behind her, his footsteps, his breathing, getting closer with every second. 3 blocks ago, she had been walking home from her shift at the ice cream shop, a normal Tuesday evening. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. She had her earbuds in, listening to music, thinking about the history test she had tomorrow. Then the white van had slowed beside her. At first, she ignored it, kept walking, but the van followed, and when she glanced over, the driver smiled at her, a cold, hungry smile that made her stomach turn to ice. She walked faster. The van sped up. She turned down a side street. The van followed. Then it stopped, and the man got out. Sophie ran. She was 14 years old, a freshman at Thornwood High, 5'2" and barely 100 pounds. The man chasing her was at least 6 feet tall, muscular, with dead eyes that promised terrible things. She had screamed for help twice. A woman walking her dog had looked up, seen the man chasing a teenage girl, and quickly crossed to the other side of the street. A man in a business suit had pretended not to hear, walking faster toward his car. Nobody helped. Nobody ever helped. Her lungs were burning. Her legs were giving out. She had maybe 30 seconds before he caught her. Then she saw it. A building with motorcycles parked outside, lights on inside, a sign that read, "Iron Reapers MC, members only." Sophie knew what that meant. Everyone in Thornwood knew. The Iron Reapers were the local motorcycle club, dangerous men with tattoos and criminal records. The kind of men parents warned their daughters to stay away from, but the man behind her was worse. She knew it in her bones. She burst through the door. The interior was dim, smelling of motor oil and cigarette smoke. Motorcycle parts covered workbenches. Posters of bikes and rock bands lined the walls. And behind a counter, working on an engine with grease-covered hands, stood a man who looked like death itself. He was in his late 50s, with a shaved head, a grey beard, and arms covered in faded tattoos. A leather vest displayed patches she didn't understand. His eyes were pale blue and cold as a winter sky. Sophie froze. For one terrible moment, she thought she had escaped one monster only to find another. Then the door behind her crashed open. The man from the van stood in the doorway, breathing hard, his face twisted with rage. He was wearing a polo shirt and khaki pants, looking like someone's accountant or middle manager. Normal, respectable. Except for those dead eyes. "There you are," he said, his voice eerily calm. "Sweetie, you shouldn't run from Daddy like that. You scared me." Sophie's blood went cold. He was playing a role, pretending to be her father, counting on the biker to not get involved in a family matter. She opened her mouth to scream, to explain, to beg, but before she could speak, the biker moved. He stepped around the counter with surprising speed for a man his size, positioning himself between Sophie and the stranger. His massive frame blocked the doorway completely. "Help me," Sophie whispered, her voice cracking. "He's not my dad. He's been chasing me. Please, please help me." The biker didn't take his eyes off the man in the doorway, but he reached back with one hand and gently pushed Sophie behind him. Then he leaned down and whispered something only she could hear. "You're in danger. Pretend I'm your dad, now." Sophie's heart hammered against her ribs. She didn't understand, but something in his voice made her trust him. The biker straightened up and faced the stranger with a cold smile. "Sorry, friend. Think you've got the wrong kid. This is my daughter, Sophie. Just got here from her mum's place." "Isn't that right, sweetheart?" Sophie found her voice. Yes. Hi, Dad." The stranger's smile flickered. His eyes darted between Sophie and the biker, calculating. There must be some mistake. That's my daughter. She's confused. She has episodes. That's so? The biker crossed his arms. What's her birthday? Silence. What school does she go to? More silence. What's her middle name? The stranger's mask slipped, just for a second, but it was enough. I don't have to explain myself to you, he snapped. Give me the girl, and nobody gets hurt. The biker laughed. It was not a pleasant sound. Son, you just walked into the Iron Reaper's clubhouse and threatened a member's child. Do you have any idea what that means? He reached behind the counter and produced a shotgun. The click of the safety being released echoed through the room like thunder. It means you've got about 5 seconds to get off our property before I redecorate this wall with your insides. The stranger's face contorted with fury, but he wasn't stupid. He was outnumbered, outgunned, and standing in enemy territory. This isn't over, he hissed. Yeah, it is. 5, 4, 3. The stranger turned and ran. Seconds later, the white van's engine roared to life and tires squealed as it disappeared into the night. The biker lowered the shotgun. Then he turned to Sophie, and his entire demeanor changed. The cold killer vanished, replaced by something almost gentle. You okay, kid? Sophie burst into tears. She couldn't help it. The fear, the adrenaline, the overwhelming relief crashed over her like a wave. She stood there sobbing, while a man she'd been taught to fear handed her a clean shop rag to wipe her face. I'm Jack, he said quietly. Jack Dawson. Most people call me Reaper. What's your real name, sweetheart? Sophie. Sophie Mitchell. I was walking home from work and he started following me, and nobody would help and I didn't know where to go. You did good coming here. Real good. Jack pulled out his phone. I'm going to call some of my brothers, and we're going to figure out who that bastard is. But first, he looked at her with those pale blue eyes, and Sophie saw something she hadn't expected. Pain. Old deep pain that had never fully healed. First, I need you to tell me everything, from the beginning. Can you do that? Sophie nodded. She didn't know it yet, but walking through that door had just changed both their lives forever. And somewhere in the darkness outside, the man in the white van was making a phone call of his own. We have a problem. She got away, found shelter with the Iron Reapers. The voice on the other end was cold as ice. Then, we'll have to handle the Iron Reapers too. Within 20 minutes, the Iron Reapers clubhouse had transformed into a command center. 6 bikers had arrived, summoned by Jack's urgent calls. They sat around a battered wooden table, listening as Sophie recounted her terrifying experience. She told them about the white van, the chase, the man with dead eyes. She told them about the people who had looked away, about running until her lungs burned. And she told them about the words the man had spoken through the van window before she bolted. You'll do nicely. The client likes them young. The room went dead silent. Client? Repeated a massive biker named Gunner, his voice barely above a whisper. He said, client. Jack's hands tightened into fists. This wasn't random. This was a hunt. Sophie looked around the table, confused. What do you mean? I don't understand. The oldest biker at the table, a weathered man in his 60s called Priest, leaned forward. His voice was gentle despite his fearsome appearance. Sophie, what you walked into tonight. That man wasn't a random predator. The way he operated, the words he used, this sounds organized, professional. Professional? Sophie's voice cracked. Professional at what? Nobody wanted to answer. Finally, Jack spoke. There are people out there who hunt kids, hunt them like animals, then they sell them to the highest bidder. He met her eyes, not sugarcoating the truth. You were being recruited, Sophie, for something no child should ever experience. Sophie felt like the floor had dropped out beneath her. Her stomach lurched. She thought about the man's smile, the way he had looked at her like she was merchandise. But I got away. I'm safe now, right? The bikers exchanged looks. You're safe in this building, Jack said carefully, but that man saw you come in here. He knows where you are, and if he's part of what we think he's part of. They don't give up, Gunner finished. Not when they've already marked a target. Sophie started trembling again. So what do I do? What happens now? Jack stood up and walked to the window, peering out at the dark street. First, we call your parents. They need to know you're safe. Then, I can't. Sophie's voice was small. My mom works night shifts at the hospital. My dad left when I was 6. There's nobody home. The pain in Jack's eyes flickered again, deeper this time. What about other family? Aunts, uncles, grandparents? My grandma lives in Florida. That's it. It's just me and Mom. Jack turned to Priest. Get a message to her mother at the hospital. Tell her Sophie is safe but needs to stay here tonight. Don't give details on the phone. We don't know who might be listening. Auntie Priest nodded and stepped outside to make the call. You're letting me stay here? Sophie asked, surprised. But I'm not a member or anything. I'm just a kid. A younger biker with a scarred face spoke up. His name was Blade, and despite his intimidating appearance, his voice was surprisingly kind. Kid, you came through our door asking for help. That means something. We don't turn away people in need. But especially not children, Jack added. Never children. Sophie watched these men, these supposed criminals, these outcasts society had warned her about, mobilizing to protect her, a stranger, a teenage girl who had stumbled into their world by accident. Why? She asked quietly. Why do you care what happens to me? Jack sat down across from her. For a long moment he didn't speak. Then he pulled out his wallet and removed a worn photograph. A girl, maybe 16 or 17. Blonde hair, bright smile, eyes full of life. My daughter, Jack said softly. Emily, she died 15 years ago. Car accident. Drunk driver crossed the center line. He paused, his voice rough. She was 14, same age as you. Sophie didn't know what to say. The photo trembled slightly in Jack's calloused hands. I couldn't save her. I wasn't there. I was on a run 3 states away when I got the call. He looked up at Sophie with those haunted blue eyes. I've spent 15 years wishing I could go back, wishing I could protect her. And tonight, a 14-year-old girl ran through my door, scared and alone, and I thought... He couldn't finish the sentence. You thought maybe this was your second chance, Sophie whispered. Jack nodded slowly. I know I can't bring Emily back. I know you're not her, but I can damn well make sure what happened to her doesn't happen to you. Not on my watch. Gunner's phone buzzed. He answered, listened, and his face went dark. Brother, we've got movement. Black SUV circling the block, no plates, tinted windows. Jack was on his feet instantly. They're surveilling us, getting ready to make a move. How many? Just the one vehicle, but that doesn't mean anything. Could be a scout. Jack grabbed his shotgun. Lock this place down. Nobody in or out without my say-so. Blade, get Sophie to the back room, the one with the reinforced door. Wait! Sophie grabbed Jack's arm. What's happening? Are they coming for me? Jack looked down at her, and for just a moment his hard exterior cracked. He placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. They're going to try, but they're going to have to go through every single one of us first. And Sophie, she looked up at him, terrified, but somehow trusting. Nobody gets through the Iron Reapers. Nobody. As Blade led her toward the back of the building, Sophie heard the sound of engines, more motorcycles arriving, reinforcements, but she also heard something else. Distant, barely perceptible, the rumble of multiple vehicles approaching from different directions. Whatever was coming, it was coming fast. The black SUV wasn't alone. By midnight, Jack counted 4 vehicles in a 2-block radius. 2 SUVs, a van, and a sedan. They moved in patterns, never staying in one place too long, always watching. They're setting up a perimeter, Gunner observed from the window. Pros military training, maybe. Or law enforcement, Priest added grimly. Some of those trafficking rings have cops on the payroll. Jack's jaw tightened. How many brothers do we have? 14 inside, another 20 on the way from the Carson City chapter. They'll be here by dawn. We might not have until dawn. In the back room, Sophie sat on an old couch, wrapped in a blanket one of the bikers had found. Blade stood guard at the door, his presence somehow comforting despite his fearsome appearance. "Can I ask you something?" Sophie said quietly. Blade nodded. "That man, the one who chased me. He said I would do nicely. He said there was a client." She swallowed hard. "How did he know about me? How did he find me?" Blade was quiet for a moment. These operations, they don't just grab random kids off the street. They scout, they watch, they learn routines, identify vulnerabilities. "You're saying he's been watching me? For how long?" Could be days, could be weeks. They're patient, they wait until the moment is right. Sophie felt sick. The thought that someone had been studying her, stalking her, learning when she was most vulnerable. My walk home from work, she realized. I take the same route every Tuesday and Thursday. Through the industrial district because it's faster. Blade nodded grimly. They knew your pattern. Tonight was supposed to be the night. The door opened and Jack entered, his face grim. He carried a laptop, which he set on a table in front of Sophie. We pulled traffic camera footage from the area where he chased you. Got a clear shot of the van's plates. He turned the screen toward her. We also got this, a photograph, the man who had chased her, captured by a security camera at a gas station. His name is Vincent Mercer, 42 years old, no criminal record. Works as a realtor in Thornwood. Jack's voice dripped with disgust. Upstanding citizen. Member of the Rotary Club. Coaches Little League on weekends. That's him, Sophie whispered. That's definitely him. There's more. Jack clicked to another image. Mercer has connections. Financial records show payments to offshore accounts. Communication logs we obtained show he's been in contact with someone called the Broker. The Broker? Priest stepped forward. A ghost. Nobody knows his real name or face, but in certain circles he's infamous. He runs an auction network. Kids from across the country, sold to the highest bidder. Sophie's hands shook. An auction? Like property? Exactly like property. Jack's voice was steel. And Mercer was supposed to deliver you to him. You were already assigned a lot number, Sophie. They had a buyer lined up. The room spun. Sophie thought she might faint. But I got away, she managed. I ruined their plan. You did more than that. Jack sat down beside her. You exposed them. They don't know how much you saw, how much you know, and now you're in the one place they can't easily reach. So they'll what? Just give up? Jack shook his head slowly. No, they'll escalate. That's why they're surrounding us. They're going to try to take you by force. But why? Why risk attacking a motorcycle club? Can't they just find another victim? The silence that followed was heavy. Finally, Jack spoke. Because you saw Mercer's face, you can identify him. And more importantly, he pulled up another image on the laptop. Sophie's blood ran cold. It was a photograph of her, taken from a distance through what looked like a telephoto lens. She was walking out of school laughing with a friend. They've been building a file on you for months, Jack explained. You weren't a random target, Sophie. You were specifically requested. Someone out there wanted you specifically, and they paid a lot of money for the privilege. Sophie stared at her own image, feeling violated in a way she couldn't describe. Who? She whispered. Who would do that? Jack clicked one more time. A new image appeared. A man in an expensive suit, standing at a podium, shaking hands with the mayor of Thornwood. His name is Harrison Wells, billionaire, philanthropist, owns half the businesses in this county. Jack's voice was cold as death. He also happens to be the broker, and you, Sophie, were supposed to be his personal acquisition. Sophie looked at the photograph, at the smiling, respectable face of a monster. He's coming for me, isn't he? He's going to try. Jack stood, his hand resting briefly on her shoulder, but he made one mistake. He sent his people after you in our territory, and the Iron Reapers protect their own. But I'm not one of you. Jack looked down at her with something fierce and protective burning in his eyes. You are now. Outside, the rumble of engines grew louder. The Iron Reapers were gathering, and somewhere in the darkness, Harrison Wells was about to learn that some prey came with protectors. The battle for Sophie Mitchell was about to begin. The attack came at 3 a.m. Sophie was dozing on the couch when the first explosion shattered the front windows. Glass flew everywhere. Smoke grenades followed, filling the room with thick white clouds. Contact! Multiple hostiles! Gunner's voice roared through the chaos. Jack grabbed Sophie and pulled her down behind an overturned table. Stay low! Don't move! Gunfire erupted from all directions. The Iron Reapers returned fire, their shots disciplined despite the confusion. Sophie covered her ears, her heart pounding so hard she thought it might explode. Through the smoke she saw shadows moving, men in tactical gear, faces covered, moving like soldiers. These weren't street thugs. These were professionals. They're breaching the back! Blade shouted. Jack made a split-second decision. Priest Gunner, hold the front. Blade, with me. We're getting Sophie out through the tunnel. Tunnel? Sophie didn't have time to ask. Jack pulled her to her feet and half-carried her toward the back of the building. Blade covered their retreat, his weapon barking at anyone who got too close. They reached a storage room filled with motorcycle parts. Jack kicked aside a heavy floor mat, revealing a trapdoor. Old Prohibition Tunnel, he explained, yanking it open. Leads to the warehouse 3 blocks east. Go. Sophie descended into darkness. Jack right behind her. Blade stayed at the top, still firing. Go, brother, I'll hold them. Blade, go! Jack grabbed Sophie's hand and ran. The tunnel was narrow, damp, barely lit by emergency lights. Their footsteps echoed off concrete walls. Behind them, Sophie heard Blade's gunfire suddenly stop, then a single shot, then silence. Jack's grip on her hand tightened, but he didn't slow down. They emerged in a dusty warehouse filled with abandoned machinery. Jack led her to a corner where a motorcycle waited, covered by a tarp. Emergency bike, he explained, throwing off the cover. Always keep one stashed. He climbed on and pulled Sophie up behind him. Hold tight. Don't let go no matter what. The engine roared to life. They burst through a side door and into the night. The streets were chaos, police sirens in the distance, gunfire still echoing from the clubhouse, black SUVs patrolling every corner. Jack weaved through alleys and back streets, his decades of experience guiding them through impossible gaps. Sophie clung to him, her face pressed against his leather vest, praying they would make it. After 20 minutes of evasive driving, Jack pulled into an underground parking garage beneath an apartment building. He killed the engine and helped Sophie off. Safe house, he said quietly. Only 3 people know about this place, and 2 of them are dead. The apartment was small but clean. Jack locked the door, checked the windows, then finally allowed himself to breathe. You okay, kid? Sophie was shaking. Blade, is he? Jack's face was stone. Blade knew the risks. We all do. He stayed behind so we could get out. He died for me. He died protecting an innocent. That's what we do. That's who we are. Sophie sank onto a worn couch, tears streaming down her face. A man she barely knew had given his life to save hers. How was she supposed to live with that? Jack sat beside her, his massive frame somehow comforting. Listen to me, Sophie. What happened tonight, that's not on you. That's on the men who attacked us. That's on Harrison Wells. Blade made his choice and he made it proud. But why? Why would he die for someone he just met? Jack was quiet for a long moment. Then he spoke. When I lost Emily, I wanted to die. Spent 2 years drinking myself into the ground. Nearly put a bullet in my own head more than once. He paused. The club saved me, gave me a reason to keep going. They became my family. He looked at Sophie with those haunted blue eyes. We're not good men, Sophie. We've done things that would make you sick. But there's a line we don't cross. We don't hurt innocents. We don't prey on the weak. And we never ever let a child come to harm if we can stop it. Even if it costs your lives, especially then, because that's the only way men like us find redemption. Sophie wiped her tears. Outside, sirens continued to wail. What happens now? Jack pulled out his phone. Now we end this. Harrison Wells thinks he can buy anything. People, cops, politicians, but he can't buy us, and he made a fatal mistake tonight. What mistake? Jack's smile was cold as winter. He killed one of my brothers. Now I'm going to burn his entire empire to the ground. By dawn, the full scope of the disaster became clear. 3 Iron Reapers had died defending the clubhouse. Blade, a prospect named Tommy, and Old Red, who had been with the club since its founding. 7 others were wounded. The clubhouse itself was destroyed, but the attackers had paid a heavier price. 11 of Harrison Wells's mercenaries were dead or captured, and one of them was talking. Jack met with Detective Maria Santos in a neutral location, a diner on the outskirts of town. Santos was one of the few cops in Thornwood not on Wells's payroll. She had been investigating him for years, always hitting dead ends. The mercenary gave us everything, Santos said, sliding a folder across the table. Names, dates, locations. Wells has been running this operation for over a decade, dozens of children, sold to wealthy predators across the globe. Jack opened the folder. The contents made his stomach turn. Photos, transaction records, a ledger of human beings treated like inventory. "Why now?" he asked. "Why is this guy suddenly talking?" "Because Wells tried to have him killed in custody, sent a dirty cop to finish the job." Santos smiled grimly. "The cop is in federal custody now, and our witness is very motivated to cooperate." "What about Sophie? Is she safe?" "Safer than she was. We've got federal marshals involved now. Wells can't touch her without exposing himself completely." Santos leaned forward. "But here's the thing, Jack. We need her testimony. She's the only victim who got away, the only one who can identify Vincent Mercer and connect him directly to Wells. She's 14 years old. You want to put her on the stand against a billionaire with unlimited resources? I want to put a monster in prison. And yes, it will be hard. But Sophie is stronger than you think. I've seen it." Jack thought about the girl who had run 3 blocks with a predator on her heels. The girl who had burst into a biker clubhouse and trusted a stranger with her life. The girl who had watched men die for her and was still standing. "I'll talk to her," he said. "But it's her choice, not mine, not yours." That evening, Jack returned to the safe house with news. Sophie listened as he explained everything. The captured mercenary, the evidence against Wells, the federal investigation, and the request for her testimony. "They need me to testify?" Sophie asked quietly. "They want you to. But Sophie, you don't have to. We can keep you hidden, get you out of the state, give you a new identity. Wells will eventually go down with or without your testimony, but it would be faster with me." "Yes." Sophie was quiet for a long time. She walked to the window and looked out at the city lights. "Blade died for me. Tommy and Red died for me. Men I never met gave their lives so I could survive." She turned to face Jack. "If I hide, if I run away, their deaths mean nothing. Wells keeps doing what he does. More kids get taken, more families get destroyed. Sophie, you're 14. Nobody expects you to carry this weight." "Maybe not, but I'm carrying it anyway." She straightened her shoulders. "I'll testify. I'll tell them everything. And I'll look Harrison Wells in the eye when I do it." Jack studied her for a long moment, then he nodded slowly. "You've got more courage than most grown men I know. I learned from watching you." For the first time since this nightmare began, Jack Dawson smiled. "Let's go take down a monster." The trial of Harrison Wells became the biggest news story in the country. For 3 weeks, witness after witness took the stand. Survivors who had escaped, parents who had lost children, law enforcement officials who had been bought and later turned. The evidence was overwhelming, damning, impossible to deny. But the moment everyone waited for came on the trial's final day. Sophie Mitchell took the stand. The courtroom was packed. Reporters filled every seat. Camera crews lined the walls, and in the defendant's chair, Harrison Wells sat in his expensive suit, his face a mask of arrogant confidence. He had beaten charges before. He had destroyed witnesses before. He believed he would do it again. Sophie walked to the witness stand with her head high. She wore a simple blue dress, her hair pulled back, looking every bit the innocent child she was. But her eyes told a different story. Those eyes had seen monsters, and they were not afraid. "Miss Mitchell," the prosecutor began, "can you tell the court what happened on the evening of October 15th? Sophie described everything. The white van, the chase, the man with dead eyes, running until she couldn't breathe, finding refuge with the Iron Reapers. And when you entered the motorcycle club, what happened next? A man named Jack Dawson protected me. He pretended to be my father, to confuse my attacker. Then he and his club kept me safe, while the men who wanted to take me tried to kill us all." "Objection," Wells's lawyer interrupted. "The witness is characterizing." "Overruled. Continue, Miss Mitchell." "Yes." Sophie looked directly at Harrison Wells for the first time. He met her gaze with cold contempt. "I know who you are," Sophie said quietly, her voice carrying through the silent courtroom. "You're the man who bought me. You paid for me like I was a piece of furniture. You were going to do terrible things to me. And you've done terrible things to so many others." Miss Mitchell, the prosecutor tried to redirect, but Sophie wasn't finished. You think you're powerful. You think money makes you untouchable. But you made a mistake. You sent your people after me, in a place where real men were watching. Men with honor, men with courage. Men who would die before they let you hurt a child. She stood up in the witness box, her small frame somehow commanding the entire room. 3 of those men are dead now, because of you, and I'm going to make sure their sacrifice meant something. I'm going to make sure you never hurt anyone ever again. The courtroom erupted. The judge banged his gavel. Wells's lawyers shouted objections, but none of it mattered. The jury deliberated for less than 4 hours. Guilty, on all counts. Harrison Wells was sentenced to life in prison without parole. Vincent Mercer received 40 years. 17 other members of the trafficking network were arrested across 6 states. It was over. 1 month later, Sophie stood in a cemetery on the outskirts of Thornwood. 3 new headstones marked the graves of Blade, Tommy, and Red. The Iron Reapers had given them a hero's funeral, complete with 100 motorcycle procession that brought the entire city to a standstill. Jack stood beside her, his arm around her shoulders. "They would be proud of you," he said quietly. "I hope so. I think about them every day. That's how they stay alive, in our memories, in the way we live because they gave us the chance to." Sophie placed flowers on each grave. Then she turned to Jack. "What happens now? To me, I mean. Your mom's got a new job in Colorado. Fresh start. New school. You'll be okay. What about you?" Jack smiled sadly. "I'll be here, rebuilding the club, keeping the roads safe, same as always." Sophie hugged him tightly. This man who had saved her life. This unlikely father who had given her hope when she had none. "Thank you," she whispered, "for pretending to be my dad." Jack held her close, his voice rough with emotion. "I wasn't pretending, Sophie, not for a single second." They stood together in the morning light, 2 broken people who had found healing in each other, a teenage girl who had learned that heroes come in unexpected forms, and a grieving father who had finally found redemption. 6 months later, Sophie received a package in the mail. Inside was a leather bracelet with a small iron charm shaped like a reaper's scythe, and a note in Jack's rough handwriting. "Once a reaper, always a reaper. Your family now, kid, forever." Sophie wore that bracelet every day for the rest of her life. A reminder that sometimes the people society fears most are the ones who will protect you with their dying breath. And that courage isn't about not being afraid. It's about running into a room full of bikers because you trust them more than the monster behind you. It's about saying 5 simple words to a terrified child. "Pretend I'm your dad, now." And it's about meaning every single one of them.